The city always felt like a pressure cooker after a long week. That's why I live for weekends at my cottage, a small secluded place about an hour outside of town. Just the sound of the lake lapping against the shore and the rustle of leaves in the trees was enough to unwind me. This particular weekend had been especially restorative. I'd spent my time fishing, reading, and generally avoiding the incessant notifications and demands of modern life. Sunday evening arrived too quickly, and with a sigh, I packed up the car and headed back to the city. As I pulled into my driveway on Elm Street, I noticed something peculiar. My bright red Corvette, which I'd painstakingly restored over several years, was the focal point of attention. Karen, my neighbor, stood next to it, running her hand along the hood like she was inspecting produce at a farmer's market. Karen and I had a complicated relationship. To be frank, she made it abundantly clear that she didn't approve of me, a black man, living in what she perceived as her predominantly white neighborhood. Her disapproval manifested in petty complaints to the HOA, passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern, and an overall air of hostility that made me want to build a 10-foot-high fence between our properties. I parked my car, a little nervous, and walked towards her, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Karen, is everything all right? Were you admiring the car?" I asked, carefully navigating the situation to avoid any issues that could escalate. She didn't acknowledge my question directly. Instead, she straightened up, a strange glint in her eyes. "This car," she said, her voice laced with a condescending tone, "it doesn't suit you, James." I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to retort. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Karen," I said, keeping my voice calm. That's just what she wanted. I was sure that I was just being polite and making sure that I did not give her any reason to report me again. "It's simple," she replied, her voice rising slightly. "I've decided I want it, and I'm willing to offer you a fair price." I was curious as to what she thought was a fair price. I was a car salesman, and I knew the value of a car. I knew that the work that I put in and the cost of a car like mine was worth thousands of dollars. Little did I know what she was going to say next. I crossed my arms, trying to decipher her intentions. "Okay, Karen, I'm listening. What's your offer?" I asked, a touch of amusement creeping into my voice. I honestly thought she was trying to be funny. I have been waiting for a joke since I bought the house from her. This had to be it. I was hoping it was it. The joke would give insight into why she disliked me so much. $5, she declared, her expression completely serious. $5, take it or leave it. That's more than it's worth, considering who owns it. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Was she serious? This had to be some kind of elaborate joke, a bizarre attempt to assert dominance. I wanted to laugh, but the cold, hard look in her eyes told me she was dead serious. She was insane. I had to get away from her. She was now scaring me. "Karen, I think you've had a bit too much sun today. I'm not selling my car for $5. It's not even a remotely reasonable offer. I understand that you do not like me, but that does not mean that you can try to rob men in plain sight. Be serious," I replied, trying to keep the incredulity out of my voice. "This isn't a negotiation, James," she snapped, her voice now shrill. "It's a civic duty. This car belongs in better hands, in a better neighborhood. And if you don't sell it to me for $5, I'm calling the police." I blinked, utterly bewildered. "You're calling the police because I won't sell you my car for $5? Karen, that's absurd. You can't be serious. I'm not even doing anything wrong to warrant the police being called." I tried to reason with her, but she was beyond logic. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide and manic. "I'm warning you, James. Sell me the car or I'll call them. They'll see things my way." The level of entitlement and delusion was staggering. I knew that if I didn't calm her down then, she would call the police. As I stood there, grappling with the sheer absurdity of the situation, I noticed she was already reaching for her phone. A mix of anger and disbelief washed over me. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about her deep-seated prejudice and her desperate need to control the situation. With a shake of my head, I turned and started walking towards my house. "Do what you have to do, Karen. But I'm not selling my car to you for any amount, certainly not for $5. I said, walking in the house and locking the door. I watched through the window as Karen, her voice rising with each passing second, spoke to the 911 dispatcher. I couldn't make out the exact words, but I could imagine the narrative she was weaving. A tale of a black man refusing to comply with her demands of a valuable car being misused, and of her being a victim in her own twisted reality. I sighed. This was exactly the kind of nonsense I tried to avoid by escaping to the cottage. Now it had followed me home. I had to stay calm. I know that with her on the phone with the police would tell them a lie. I just needed to be prepared to tell the truth and show any proof that what she was saying was a lie. A wave of anxiety washed over me. I knew that encounters with law enforcement could be fraught with danger for black men, even when they were entirely innocent. Karen was weaponizing her privilege and the potential biases within the system to harass and intimidate me. I was afraid to open the door because I was afraid of what she was going to do. She was already on the phone with the police. She had a witness to any and everything that could happen at this point. As I waited, I started thinking about all the little things that she had done to me in the past. The police reports for loud noises, the HOA complaints, the snide remarks when she thought no one would hear, and countless other little acts of hatred. It all started to become overwhelming. I decided to record the rest of the encounter on my phone, just in case. I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. Karen was still ranting into the phone, pacing back and forth in my driveway. A few minutes later, a police car pulled up, its flashing lights cutting through the evening gloom. Two officers emerged, their faces grim. They seemed confused as to why they were here. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and opened the door. I knew that what was about to happen could be difficult, but I was determined to stand my ground and tell the truth. I watched as the officers spoke to Karen, her gestures becoming increasingly animated. The officers then approached me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. I knew I had to be careful to remain calm and respectful, even though every fiber of my being wanted to scream. "Good evening, sir," one of the officers said, his tone professional but guarded. "We received a call about a dispute. Could you tell us what's going on?" I explained the situation as calmly and clearly as possible, recounting Karen's bizarre demand, her outrageous offer, and her subsequent call to 911. I showed them my car title, proving ownership, and emphasized that I had done nothing wrong. As I spoke, I could see Karen glaring at me from across the yard, her face contorted with anger. I could hear the cuss words coming from her mouth as I spoke to the officer. The officers listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Karen, who was now pacing and muttering to herself. After I finished, they turned to her, their expressions hardening slightly. They asked her to explain her side of the story. She launched into a tirade, accusing me of being disrespectful, of not fitting in, and of somehow devaluing the neighborhood by owning the Corvette. I was doing nothing but living, and I was devaluing the neighborhood. Her words were laced with prejudice and entitlement, and even the officers seemed taken aback by her blatant bigotry. I almost laughed because she was exposing herself in front of the police. I wished that I was recording to show everyone that she was a liar. "Ma'am," one of the officers interrupted, "with all due respect, this sounds like a civil matter, not a criminal one. Mr. Bean is under no obligation to sell you his car, and certainly not for $5. Karen's face flushed crimson. "But he's. She stammered, searching for the right words to justify her actions. "He's wasting it. It should be in the hands of someone who appreciates it, someone who belongs here." The officers exchanged a look. "Ma'am, those are your opinions, but they don't constitute a crime. We can't force Mr. Bean to sell you his property." I felt a surge of relief, but also a knot of anger in my stomach. These officers were being reasonable, but I knew that not all encounters with law enforcement ended this way. Karen's blatant racism could have easily been misinterpreted, twisted into a justification for harassment or worse. The officers informed Karen that they were leaving and that she should refrain from harassing me. As they turned to leave, Karen snapped. Her face twisted into a mask of pure rage. She screamed, "You're all against me. You're letting him get away with this." She then charged towards me, her hands outstretched. "I'll take that car myself," she shrieked. Everything happened so fast. One moment the officers were walking away, and the next Karen was lunging at me. I instinctively raised my arms to defend myself as she flailed wildly, scratching and clawing. She managed to connect with a glancing blow to my face, and I felt a sharp sting on my cheek. I knew that I had to do something to keep her away from me. The officers immediately intervened, grabbing Karen and pulling her away from me. She struggled violently, kicking and screaming, her face contorted with fury. "Let me go. He deserves it. He's a thief." I can't believe they were doing this with my tax dollars. I stood there, shaken and bleeding, watching as the officers wrestled her to the ground. It was surreal, witnessing her complete and utter meltdown. This was all about me not selling my car for $5. I was being attacked and beaten by my neighbor. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," one of the officers said, his voice firm. "Resisting arrest will only make things worse." Karen continued to struggle, but the officers managed to handcuff her and lead her to the police car. As she was being led away, she turned to me, her eyes filled with venom. "You haven't heard the last of this, James Bean. I'll make you regret this." I watched as the police car pulled away, its flashing lights disappearing down the street. The adrenaline slowly began to subside, leaving me feeling exhausted and drained. I touched my cheek, wincing at the pain. Karen's attack had been brief, but it had left a mark, both physically and emotionally. After the police left, I went inside and cleaned the scratch on my face. I then sat at my kitchen table, replaying the events of the evening in my mind. It was hard to believe that a simple weekend getaway had ended with my neighbor being arrested for attacking me. The whole incident was a stark reminder of the prejudice and hatred that still existed in the world, simmering beneath the surface and occasionally erupting in ugly and unexpected ways. I had to get a restraining order and a harassment order. I was not safe, and she was threatening me. The next day, I filed a police report and obtained a restraining order against Karen. I also contacted a lawyer to explore my legal options. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew that I couldn't let Karen's actions intimidate me. I refused to be driven out of my home or to live in fear. I decided that I would get cameras installed around my property. I would have to protect myself because she would be looking for me. I was afraid of what could happen because she had exposed that she was a racist. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office informing me that Karen had been charged with assault and battery, as well as resisting arrest. I was also informed that the DA was looking at hate crime charges as well. I attended the court hearing, where I testified about the incident. Karen, looking disheveled and contrite, pleaded not guilty, claiming that she had been provoked and that she didn't remember attacking me. The judge listened to my testimony and reviewed the evidence, including the police report and the video I had recorded on my phone, and was granted the restraining order. In the end, Karen was found guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to probation, anger management classes, and community service. She was also ordered to pay me restitution for my medical expenses and the damage to my property. While the legal outcome provided some measure of justice, it didn't erase the trauma of the experience. I started to consider whether I should move. This was my home, and I love my home.